All right, YouTube, Repo Man 64. Here we are. All right, so as you know, it's cold out here in the secret broadcast cave. It's like 40. I know, right? Above zero. It's cold. It's really cold. It's going to get down to 29 tonight. Stuff's going to freeze. We're not going to know what to do. I grew up in Montana. I know exactly what to do. All right. So, as you know, I spent 8 sleepless nights with numbers bouncing around my head. I never wanted to work on the Jubilee. I did not work on it because there was so much there that I didn't think I could be able to figure out. And turns out that when I just built a new timeline, so I built the first timeline, and that was linear. Put all the dates I could find in the Bible. Let me get that off my nose. Put all the dates I could find in the Bible in a 1 year format, and uh, just did it month by month, different years, but I made it linear, and it worked. And then I made another timeline after that, which did the 6 days you shall work and 7 days you shall rest. It was a progression. But then all of a sudden, all of these dates of things started coming in. So I decided, okay. I just started writing the dates down. I started doing mathematical equations between dates and how far it was and all this different stuff. And I thought, all right, fine. I'll make a linear timeline for the last 6,000 years, even up to the 7,000 years when the end is. And so it, as just as the other timelines, it surprised me how everything fit so nicely. I got a button up. I got a space heater behind me. Cold. And so I built this linear timeline. The last 7,000 years are on it. Sister Sandy, of course. I didn't ask her, but she always offers. She's really good at taking my crayon timelines and turn them into real good looking timelines. And so she said she's working on it. But she wants a timeline. My first timeline linear, second timeline 6 days you work, 7 days you rest. She wants a timeline of all the Jubilee cycles. And I'm like, my mind can't do that. I can think out 6,000 years, but I can't think out six. I can't build 120 Jubilee cycles. So she's trying. That will be her timeline, but it would be the natural progression from this linear timeline that I've made. Um, I don't know how she's going to do it. She's going to search out every date uh, in relationship to the linear timeline and put it on there. And one thing we noticed real quick I built the second timeline off of the first linear timeline, and I'll show that to you here in a second, was that no events take place on Tuesday and on Friday. It's devoid of anything happening on Tuesday and Friday. And the further I went, I discovered that Adam, when he was put to sleep and the rib was removed from him, that it's quite possible that was put to sleep for 3.5 days, just like Jesus. Remember, Jesus comes to replace Adam, and that Adam might have actually been put to sleep for 3.5 days. And if that's the case, if it's the 3.5 days that Jesus was in the grave, 84 hours, then it would appear as though Eve was made. Remember, creation means I didn't create this cup. Man did not create this cup. God created everything to go into this cup. These people are trying to create life, but they keep having to use the building blocks that God created. So they're not creating anything. They're trying to make stuff. Somebody made this cup. They didn't create it. The building blocks for Eve were already created. Eve was made, I believe, on the sixth day of time. Adam was created on the sixth day of creation. And so it would appear as though 84 hours after, and I don't know, I don't know if that's accurate or not. It just fits. And when we have symmetry, God's very symmetrical. When we have symmetry, we have to take a look at it and ponder it and consider it. So She might be building a timeline, which it's beyond my ability, of 120 cycles of 50-year jubilees. Now, the question that I pose is this: the jubilees will actually realign with the Shemitah cycles every 350 years automatically, because both 350 and 50 are divisible by 7 and 50. I don't know if we're supposed to count 49 years and then have a great eighth year, just like we do on Shemini, Shemini Atzeret is the great eighth day. We see this great eight all the time. So logically, it makes sense that you would count 49 years, and that's what we see in Leviticus. Leviticus is super clear. When you come into the land, they came into the land in spring, they came into the land in March. From there, you will begin your Shemitah. But then we see in Leviticus a little bit further down on the Jubilee where it says, blow the trumpet in the Jubilee. But that word that they chose to use means in the happy time. It doesn't mean the actual Jubilee. So what it appears to me is it's saying is you count 49 years, 6 months later in September, you blow the trumpet for the joyous occasion of the fact that the Jubilee is coming up in yet another 6 months. That's where you begin your new Shemitah cycle and your new Jubilee. That makes the most sense to me. However, mathematically, the Jubilee and the Shemitah will automatically realign every 350 years. And they do that again at the end of the 7,000 year tribulation. At the end of the 7,000 years, including the tribulation and the millennium. So I'm torn between the two. To me, the first one is the most logical in that you would go 49 years and then the Shemitah cycles would stop. You would blow trumpet 6 months later, and 6 months later would begin the Jubilee and the brand new Shemitah cycle. That to me makes the most logical sense in the progression of how to count these. If you don't count it that way, then every single 50 years, the Shemitah cycle will fall back by a year, fall back by a year, fall back by a year. Every 50 years, it'll fall back by a year. And then by the time you get up to 350 years, finally it realigns. I looked for events that happened at 350, 700, 1050, and 1400. I looked to see if I could find anything that was perfectly matched to that, and I couldn't find it. You would think that that would stand out. God would make sure that that would stand out to us, but I didn't see that happening. So I have had a lot more information added to this timeline. I want to present it to you, and I have questions, and there's some of you out there that will have answers, and I love the comments and the responses, and that's what I need. I've got it posted in, not the latest one here. I'll post it in Discord here in a little while, but I've got the timeline, and his sister Sandy also has it, and we'll go over it here real quick. Let me start by sharing. Sorry, it's cold out here, so I'm sniffling. All right, let's share. Let me move me up out of the way over here. Oh, it's so cold out here. I'm sorry, I'm freezing. All right, now, again, my crayon thing, I've got to stop making them so tall. I should have, it would fit better if I didn't make it so tall. So now I got to go up and down. Historians, for hundreds of years, have placed the creation of Earth at 4004 BC. As of late, people are going in and trying to change that because we went past the date, not taking into account every word the Bible says, giving us hints and clues as to why we've gone past the date. One of the major dates we went past was September 24th, 2023. That's when they said on the Day of Atonement, that's the day they said that should be it. It should end at that time, but it didn't. And here we are still. Why are we still here? We are still here because the 6,000 years is not complete yet. This is a conglomeration of a lot of channels and things I heard, and I went into the Bible to check to make sure it didn't go against what the Bible teaches. And somebody did an incredible, and I can't even remember who it was now. I named them a few videos ago, but they did an incredible study where they said the time that Noah was not on the ground, he was off the ground, negates his arraignment where it says that you will be on the ground, working the ground by the sweat of your brow. That did not happen for that year and 10 days. Then, after I heard that, I said, okay, that kind of makes sense. It's a year and 10 days, but mathematically, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because if it did, we've already passed that date as well. Then I realized Exodus 12. I've been talking about it for 2 years now. That Exodus 12, God changed the head of the year. Like I've said before, here we are in September of the year 2000, and the year just changed to 2000 from 1999. And next year in September will be the year 2001. But then God says, this now is the head of your year. So we only went 6 months, and God changed it to 2001, 6 months early. Those 6 months still must be counted towards our 6,000 years. So I simply added them together, and I was surprised when I came up to 555 days exclusive, 557 days inclusive. And when I added them all up, that's what I came up with the time Noah spent on the ark, 1 year and 10 days, and then the 6 months of Exodus 12. So I took the middle ground. I took 556 days. It's 555 or 557. I took 556 and I put it on there. Then I heard another channel say the time that Jesus was here, from his birth until he took over, started his ministry. Between those two times, that's when the new Jubilee cycle began and the last 2,000 year count began. So I did the math. That would mean if it was 26 AD, right here on the Day of Atonement, where Jesus begins his ministry, that would mean that we aren't going to go anywhere until 2,000 years after that, which would mean we aren't going anywhere until September of the year 26 AD. So that's when it dawned on me. Again, I had all of these numbers flying around my head. And that's when I said, what about those 556 days? We have to add those back in. Surprisingly, when I added those 556 days back in from when Jesus took his ministry, and I counted back, adding them back in, because if the time didn't count from the time Jesus was born up until the time Jesus started his ministry, we are at 26 AD, and then you have 3.5 years of his ministry, but this is the starting point. When you count back to 556 days, you land right here on March 16th. That type of stuff, when that type of stuff starts to add up, when it starts to have symmetry, then you have to ask yourself that shouldn't have happened. It could have been anywhere, but that's what happens when you do the year and 10 days and the 6 months. Let me show you this screen. Let me show you a couple of screens. How do I get out of here? Is this it? Yes. Let me go. What is this? Okay, this is part of my math. And again, I did this before before I ever built the Jubilee timeline. This is what somebody said in one of their videos, and then I said those other 6 months you have to add those in too. Cursed is the ground. He wasn't on the ground for a year and 10 days. He was in that boat for 1 year and 10 days. After 1 year and 10 days, he left that boat. The boat did land on Mount Ararat, reversing the curse on the day Jesus rose. However, When you read the story, you'll see he stayed in that boat all the way up 1 year and 10 days. And so he's on that boat for that period of time. Let me keep going here. Let me get rid of this. There we go. That's the other timeline. Like I said before, I don't know where it's at. Let me see here. This is how it started. I think it's been six. I don't know when I started my YouTube channel. Slightly thereafter, all these dates started swimming around my head. So I put them on a linear timeline. Sister Sandy made it look like this. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. But I couldn't figure out that one day. And then it progressed. That is the same timeline as this, where we realize on Friday and on Tuesday there are no events until I realized Adam was created on the sixth day and Eve was created on the sixth day. And this is the day Jesus turned water to wine. This is his first miracle right here. It started. So it progressed. That's what it progressed to. And that's what I built this other timeline. Sister Sandy's going to make it look pretty. And then she's actually working on the Jubilee. I won't have any part of that because I don't know how to do that. All right. This is what started me off on the one of the things that started me off on the actually I built the timeline and realized I had the wrong date. Jenny, is it Jenny? I can't pronounce your last name. Calvilage, Sorry, I can't pronounce your last name. I had said in there, I did my math from Apophis being on April 17th. I had made a mistake, and this person very kindly said, "Hey, Apophis is April 13th." She didn't say not 17th, but April 17th is what I had on there. And when you do the math forward and backward from Apophis, now I never worked on Apophis. It's an 1100 foot meat eater. I didn't think Apophis could be wormwood, but then the more I looked at it, the more, and it's actually passing by Earth at 19,000 feet. That's insanely close. Hold on a second. I got to turn this heater up. I'm starting to shake. There we go. Uh, it is cold out here. I've been in Florida for a long time, since I was 18. Anyway, so they sent me this, and sure enough, of course, I always go back to check the math, but sure enough, when you take Apophis forward, you land on 9/24/32, which is where I was looking at because it's the Day of Atonement. The Jews believe that this is the day that they will uh, well, they think they'll see the Messiah on the Day of Atonement in 20. Well, they don't know what year. They just know that it's going to happen here soon. So we're assuming that it's 2025, and I'll keep showing you why 2025 is so important. So, and then they count backwards, and it lands on the day of the flood, and I'm like, what? That's incredible. Then of course, I had to check it out. April 13th. That's true. That's when Apophis will be closest to Earth, 19,000 miles away. That's nothing. What is that? The distance from Canada to South America? I mean, that is it's 1,100 feet, so it's not small. Pretty good size. But it says safely pass. But they've been talking about Apophis for so long. I'm not fully convinced of some gravitational force pulling it into Earth. And it would fit perfectly with what we read about wormwood. And ironically, the dates match. And when you see symmetry, you have to stop and ask yourself, why are we seeing that? Now, I don't know anybody that doesn't think that Jesus was here. I've heard a couple, but their arguments are weak. That Jesus wasn't here for 33 and a half years. He was 33 and a half years old on the cross because he was born on September the 30th in 3 BC. Now, if you say, and I heard them say this, well, I think Jesus was born in 6 BC. Well, I'm sorry, but when you do that, that means Jesus went to the cross in 27 AD. You can't do that. Then I've heard others say, no, it was 1 BC, and that puts us at March 30th, 32 AD, which again, would bring us to about the time, but it's not perfectly symmetrical. It's got to be perfectly symmetrical. Jesus went to the cross on March 30th in 30 AD, and 33 and a half years earlier than that was his birthday, September 30th, 3 BC. That's when Jesus was born. He was conceived on Christmas Day. So either way you try to move this, you're taking away from one side and adding to another. It won't work unless you try to say that Jesus was 34 and a half or 35 and a half, which is not symmetrical. Jesus was 33 and a half years old at the cross. He spent 3.5 years, and I heard others, well, maybe he only spent 2.5 years in his ministry. It's not symmetrical. It doesn't work. It has to exhibit some common sense in your statements. You can't just say things without having uh, biblical backing. Do I have biblical backing? Absolutely. Jesus was in the grave for 84 hours, 3.5 days. His ministry was 3.5 years long. Um, Adam was 33 and a half when he was removed from the garden. He was 26 and a half when he was created. Jesus took over his ministry, began his ministry on the year 26 and a half or September AD. So I have symmetry on my side. It works mathematically that this is accurate. There is no other date, like I said, that you can move forward and backward and be accurate because you're just moving his birthday one way and his the day of the cross and the other way. It doesn't work. All right, David the Watchman did an incredible video. Absolutely loved it. Brett was on there. We were all on there. He did it as a live, and we were all on there discussing his video. It was an amazing video. He too, and I believe he noticed this some time ago. I didn't pick up on it. Obviously, I wouldn't have put the wrong date for Apophis on my timeline, but he actually has said the same thing that I have been saying. And he's a great guy. He goes around, you see him here with this QR code. He goes around and posts that in a lot of places that people could scan it after the rapture occurs to know what happened. Now, what do we have here? From the date Israel was attacked on October 7th of 2023 to October the 31st. Now remember, Apophis, when you count back those 1,260 days, October the 31st, 2025 is the date you land on. And then he was in there talking about it. So I was snapping screenshots, and I thought that was pretty cool that how that lines up. That 555 keeps happening to me nowadays, kind of telling me that I am onto something with that year and 10 days and the 6 months adding up to 556 days. Let's see. Okay, now something happened while I was building the timeline. I began to see a parallel between the time of the Jubilee when it begins in 25 AD. And again, I'll show that to you in a moment. I did a little bit, but I'll show you again why it starts in 25 AD on March 16th. And a parallel to when tribulation ends, I decided something told me count backwards seven or the 2,000 years, count backwards, and I find a date that lands showing me that Paul was converted on the Damascus Road on September the 24th in 32 AD, 2.5 years after the Jubilee started. It was mind blowing. I know the date that Paul was converted on the Damascus Road by building this timeline. These people, everyone has tried to figure this out for 2,000 years, and their best guess is between 2 and 3 years. We'll split it 2.5 years, and I'll show that to you in a moment. Let's see. I did math. Listen, we have numbers in the Bible. They got to fit somewhere. The 1,260 days, the 1,290 days, and the 1335. They have to fit somewhere. We can't just ignore those and grab the ones that fit and forget about the other ones. We have to use them all. So I went from September the 24th of, and this says 2017. You can do this in any year. It's actually 2000 and what is it? I think Apophis, actually from Apophis. Apophis hits, well, it's not Apophis because it's that's when the end is. I should have chose the right year because now I've confused myself. But 1,260 days plus 30 days, we land here on October the 24th. I'll show this to you in a minute on the timeline in the correct year. And that's the day that Noah was told by God to enter the ark. It is 2032. It is 2032. 1,260 days from Apophis lands on September the 24th, which is the Day of Atonement in 2032. And 1,290 days from Apophis lands on October the 24th, 2032. And it's the day God told Noah to get into the ark. Now we have 1,260 days covered twice because from Apophis forward and Apophis backward, it lands on key dates. Now we have the 1,290 days. That's written in the Bible. We have to find it, and it must land mathematically, symmetrically. So I went from September the 24th, 2032, and I add the extra 75 days, which is 1,260 plus 75 is the 1335. And it lands on Hanukkah in the year 2032. It happens after the end of the tribulation. I'm not quite certain why I'm seeing dates that land after the tribulation is over, but one lands 30 days after, which is Noah getting into the ark, and the other lands 75 days after, making it for a 1335, and it's December the 8th. This is the first day of Hanukkah. And it just, once I start seeing this, I know I'm on the right path because mathematically there should be a wrench thrown in here, but it's not happening yet. What is this? I forget who this was that was doing this. Oh, there's so many great channels. Brother Dana, Tabernacle of the Bride, Watchman, 777. They're all fantastic. They're all doing math. But this particular person, I'm not sure. Was this might have been Raw Repent. I don't recall who it was. I know Gigi also had this on showing it because she really liked it. So a lot of mathematical people, calendrical people are out there noticing the closer we get to the date that I think the rapture is going to occur. And of course, it could happen sooner. It could happen right now. There's a lot of people looking at tomorrow. There's a lot of people looking at the 23rd. There was a lot of people looking at the 19th. They weren't wrong. These are stepping stones taking us in the direction. And I want you to notice that the math that we're looking at is becoming more symmetrical now. It's becoming more, everything's falling into place to where everybody can say, wait a second, this makes sense and that makes sense. All right. So I thought this was really cool. The only thing that and of course it's not a critique of them because they've done so much amazing work here. The Enochian calendar and the Dead Sea calendar actually match. They are the same calendar, but yet they have different dates on here, which confuses me. There's only two dates that the Enochian and the Dead Sea calendar speak of as the start, and that is the day of equal parts. And the only two dates that could possibly be speaking to is the equilux and the equinox. One being on March 16th, the same exact moment, difference by seconds every single year for the past 6,000 years, and the other being the equinox, which jumps around by 12 hours every single year. It goes up 12, it goes up 12, then it bounces back. It could be on March 20th, March 19th, March 21st. It jumps back and forth. There's no real solid moment that the equinox happens, but the equilux does. And Enoch, a lot of people will cite Enoch because they're referencing a 364-day year, not taking into account what Enoch said. And Enoch said on the day that that the day and night are equalized, which is the confusion between the equinox and the equinox. But I don't know how they're starting their year a whole month later. There's nothing equal about April at all. March 16th is the day. April 16th is not equal at all. So I don't know how they do that. So this should actually read, and I don't have his dates over here, and he doesn't have March over here, so I don't know. But if you were to put March 16th on the Gregorian calendar, it's not even on here. You would start on March. I'm sorry, on the Gregorian calendar, March 16th, you would start on Nisan 1. That would be accurate. Oh, excuse me. So cold out here. All right. But at any rate, very good. And I like this, the 1.21 gigawatts dated January 21 to 22. And who knows? Who knows? Maybe this is it. Maybe we will go home tonight or tomorrow. I could only hope. I don't want to be here till March. I've never saw a date much more than a couple of weeks out. I've never seen a date 2 months out. And so, but here we are, right? That's what I'm seeing is March 16th. Oh, it was Raw Repent. Okay. That was Raw Repent that put that up. And Sister Gigi from Blue 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 Heaven? Blue Heaven. I think it's Blue Heaven. Sorry, it's Gigi. Terrible with remembering names. Remember numbers, don't remember names. Okay, so we're back at the timeline. Now, a couple of points that I want to show you here is creation began right here on September the 11th, 911 in 4004 BC. However, it very quickly changed over to 4003 BC because the head of the year is September the 15th. So we were actually only in 4 BC for 5 days. And on the fourth day, God created time. That was where we would understand time. I did everything to September the 16th because this is the day that God created Adam. And this would be the first day for Adam. And again, God made everything, but he put it all into place to work to support life. It couldn't support life until the fourth day, until God created time. And on the fifth day, he created the birds and the fish. If he hadn't created time before that, they would have just died because nothing was formed. It was void. He was putting things, he initially created everything and then he put everything into place. So again, 4003 BC on September the 16th, this is the first day that Adam was created, but time was created the day before, and the fish and the birds were created the day before that. So, I'm sorry, fish and birds on September the 15th, September the 14th is time, the fourth day. So, on the sixth day, God creates man. When he creates man, it is a jubilee. I believe this is when the Jubilee and the Shemitah cycle began. Adam was 26 and a half years old. Jesus began his ministry on September the 24th, which is half, in 26 AD. The year was 26 and a half AD when he began. We have symmetry. It was actually 5 days before his birthday, which is on September the 30th. The Bible speaks he was about 30. He was just a few days. He was just 5 days away from his 30th birthday. We go forward 7 years, Adam is in the garden. After 7 years, in the eighth year, and 47th day, the same anniversary as the flood, on Heshvan 17, Adam sins. It is now 7 years and 47 days since he was created, and Adam sins. He sins on Heshvan 17. He is now 33 and a half years old. Symmetry. Jesus was 33 and a half years old when he went to the cross. We have symmetry. This is the anniversary, it was before the flood, but it was the anniversary thereof. So I did the math. Now I tried to find symmetry for 80 jubilees. I couldn't. I couldn't find anything. In order to go begin a jubilee, it is a Shemitah cycle for sure, but it is not a jubilee. I couldn't find any symmetry after that for these 80 years right here. from when Adam was created to the point here where Jesus was born to replace Adam. Adam was the man that sinned. Jesus was the man that didn't sin, that came to pay for our sins. God and man. Jesus is God. If you do the math, it's exactly 80 jubilees and 14 days. I find it strange that those 14 days are in there a little bit, in that from September the 16th to September the 30th is 14 days. If you take 7 days and 7 days, that's what I was trying to remember last video, on either side. If you go 7 days back from September the 30th, you wind up on atonement. If you go forward 7 days from the day Adam was created, you land on atonement. Both of them land on atonement. It is pointing us, those 14 days, even though they're 14 days apart, these two, 4,000 years and 14 days, is pointing directly to the 14 days of, I was on the thought and I lost it. 14 days. No, it's pointing us directly to atonement, which when we get down here, we have the 2,000 years, the Day of Atonement, 32 AD, and we go forward. Or actually, it's actually here. Sorry. It's here on 25 AD. Like I said, those 556 days, when you remove it from the Day of Atonement, the day Jesus began his walk, this other channel said, nope, you have to remove the time from when he was born up until the Day of Atonement, when he began his ministry, just 5 days before his birthday. And when I remove those 556 days, I land perfectly. You can't make that stuff up, on March 16th in the year 25 AD, which is now what begins. And this is a new Shemitah cycle. It's now what begins the Jubilee, and it will run for the last. We have 80 Jubilees here, 40 Jubilees here, 120 Jubilees. It will run until we get to the rapture, which will complete the Jubilee and Shemitah cycles right here on Nisan 1, March 16th. Another proof I had, and I showed you in the last video, the 556 days, if you go from when Israel was invaded and you count back 556 days, you will land on the date of the cross. Again, can't make that stuff up. The numbers just keep lining up. So we have chosen 25 right here, 25 AD, where the new Jubilee and the new Shemitah cycle begins at sunset on March 16th, becoming March 17th, which is Nisan 1. Everything I have here is sunset, March 16th, Nisan 1. The Bible speaks of the last day. That is the last day. March 16th is the last day. It's the day that Lazarus died. It's the last day of the year. This was all set up for us to figure out and to do the math on everything. Now, when you take Jesus and put him back into the equation, you have 6,035 years and 8 days. But if you take out the 556 days of Noah on the ark and the 6 months in Exodus 12, you have 6,033 and a half years. It's perfect. It lands perfectly. It's 33 and a half years that Jesus carried on his ministry. You remove the 556 days and you land on, he was alive. Sorry. He was alive for 33 and a half years to the cross on March 30th, 30 AD. Is the cross. So now I said, okay, here comes where did I start? The new Jubilee cycle begins right here, right? We go 40 Jubilees, 2,000 years, and we land perfectly on March 16th in 2025, Rosh Hashanah. That is, again, nightfall becoming March the 17th is Nisan 1. Technically, March 17th is Nisan 1. But I wanted to put this here so you could see the last day. Rosh Hashanah, that's perfect, 2,000 years. So I said, I tried to do the math over here on those 7 years for Adam. I couldn't make nothing fit. Nothing would fit. It's like God is not viewing from his sin. He's not calling it a jubilee. It is simply the end of a Shemitah cycle. And he goes forward. But over here, something changes. I'm sitting there and I'm like, what's weird is if you go to the end right here, which is the Jubilee and the Shemitah cycle ends. This is the end of the tribulation. It is the Day of Atonement. It's Tishri 10, right? If you go to the end and then you count back 2,000 years, it lands on a date, which is September the 24th, 32 AD, the Day of Atonement. And I'm like, what could that date possibly be? And then I did the math, or I looked it up, and it turns out that Paul was stopped on Damascus Road. They don't know exactly the date. I do, mathematically anyway. I believe Paul was stopped on the Damascus Road. It was September the 24th, 32 AD, the Day of Atonement. Jesus stops him on the Damascus Road. He's blinded for 3 days, and then he goes into Damascus. 3 days after this date, he goes into Damascus. So again, we have the 1,000. We have Apophis right here. This is Apophis. I got to shorten this up. It's too tall. I have to keep going up and down to show it to you. This is Apophis right here. That's the center point of tribulation. It was amazing how the math, when that person showed me that, I was like, there's no way. There's no way Apophis is wormwood. I mean, it makes sense, but I never did the math. If you count forward 1,260 days, you will land on the Day of Atonement, Tishri 10. And so I said, well, 1,290 days and 1,335 days should also fit. And it does. When I put the 1,290 days from Apophis, it lands on October the 24th, the day God told Noah, get into the ark. The ark door sits open for 7 days. And then God shuts the door and the rain begins on October the 31st. Then I did the 1,335 days from Apophis, and it lands over here on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is static. It doesn't move. It's always from December the 8th to December the 15th. Adam was removed from the garden on December the 16th. He was removed on the first day of the 10th month. That's Rosh Hashanah, which is Kislev 24. 1,335 days from Apophis. I tried to figure out, and you'll see me down here, I tried to do the math on the 2,300 days. That's another number that must fit somewhere. It falls short, 220 days, it falls short of the 2,520, which is the 1,260 and 1,260 together. It falls short by 220 days, and I could not find yet. I couldn't find it, and maybe somebody in the comment section will be able to see where the 2,300 days fit, but it doesn't fit. I don't know. Is it saying that they'll build their temple somewhere around in here, 220 days after we're gone, after the rapture occurs, or after 220 days after tribulation? I don't know when. I don't know when that's going to happen. 6 months, 182, 182. No, it's not 220. 182 plus 10, 182 is 192, 192 and 38. What's 192 and 38? 8 that'd be, I don't know. I'll have to look at that. That's 2,300 days is in here somewhere. We have to take a look at that. I should have did math on those two right there. Is the temple going to be built at some point after the rapture occurs, which I think is going to happen on Nisan 1, or the nightfall of March 16th, becoming Nisan 1? I don't know. What else do I have? And I count on everyone and their piece of the puzzle to help with this. If you see anything on here that's inaccurate, like that person that saw that I had Apophis's wrong date, when they told me that, I was able to do math. And of course, David, the watchman, also recognized that. I'm not sure exactly when he did, but I'm sure it was before I did. Well, I know it was before I did because he made the video. But at any rate, uh, recognizing that and then mathematically it doing this to the date of the flood just blew my mind. And then another 38 days to when tribulation begins. There's a 38-day gap between when tribulation begins and the flood begins. And so I don't know where the 2300 days fit yet. I'm still working on it. Perhaps one of you out there will be able to see some symmetry here and figure that out. So, like I said before, a quick video here. Sister Sandy is going to shorten this up a bit, I'm sure, like she did the other one. And any other dates that you see that have symmetry in this, or maybe you can see something over here in the 80 Jubilees. Oh, one last thing. I decided, let me do, we have 240 Jubilees over there, totaling 80, but let me see if I can figure out what the 40 Jubilees might mean, which is 2,000 years, which of course we think of, when we think of that, we think of Abraham. Let me go a little bit bigger here. I know this is probably hard to see, and I apologize. Again, when Sister Sandy makes this, it'll be much better to see. So where am I at? These 40 Jubilees from creation of man up to um, Abraham. Abraham lived 175 years, which equates to 3.5 Jubilees. 50, 50, 50, and 25. It's 3.5 Jubilees. That 3.5, that 84 is always there. God always puts it in there because he's trying to tell us something. So when I do the math on 40 Jubilees, one of two things, either he was born 175 years before 2003 BC, because that's 2000 years after 4003, or he was born here and died 175 days later. This, I don't know when. Maybe somebody could help me out with that. I'm going to guess that because of this symmetry of creation, I'm going to guess he was born on September the 16th, the same day Adam was born. I am going to guess, well, I know that it's going to go, this will be his death date or his birth date. I don't know which. Maybe that's why I have a question mark there. Maybe somebody will see that and know that. There's no 0 year, so we will have to grapple with the 0 year always. I think I fixed it by stating that -1 and +1 are the same date. Um, and mathematically, when I put it all in here, it all fit, perfectly. That is 28.5 years, 28.5 years, and it fit perfectly. So from Tabernacles to March 16th. So at any rate, I will post this in Discord, and I will be back with another video when Sister Sandy has it completed, and I'll be able to, this will be much more clear. Another thing I noticed here, which was kind of cool, I don't know if you can see this, that's the hard part about this. 1.5 years, that's that 556 days that we had to give back but it gave back during Jesus's time to bring us to 25, and then to count forward 2,000 years. It's 1.5 years. Over here, it's 3.5 years. Jesus' his ministry was 3.5 years long. And then it was 2.5 years after Jesus goes to the cross that we see, it was actually 2 years, 5 months, and 26 days that we see Paul stopped on the Damascus Road. Super interesting. And then when I do math from Paul being stopped on the Damascus Road, which is in essence, I believe in essence 5, 6, in essence, 7 and what happened, and again, I keep seeing this, when I add the 2.5 to the 3.5 to the 1.5, we have a 5, 6, 7.5. That's 7 years and 6 months keeps jumping up and does it there as well. So that's why we see a 7 year and 6 month and 10 days. Those 10 days kind of baffle me. Why they're in there. The only thing I can think of is that it's possible the rapture, and I said this in the last video, might be March 26th. I don't know what those extra 10 days are for, but they're there and I can't ignore them. But the tribulation lasts 7 years, 6 months, and 10 days. Sorry, the time we are raptured to the end of the tribulation. The tribulation actually begins here, runs for a full 7 years. I know people are trying to shorten these things up to fit their timelines, but we can't. These times are solid. We can put question marks and ask questions and say it does fit symmetrically, and not none of this is, of course, thus saith the Lord. This is just all these numbers that were bouncing around in my head, and how my brain works is, I mean, I was driving, I used to drive semi, and I was doing math on if you went backwards from 60 miles an hour, taking, 1 minute, 30 miles an hour would take a half a minute. And I would sit there and I would work it out to its lowest possible um, number. And that's just, my brain just does that. It's I know it's weird, but that's what it does. So I was sitting there and all these numbers, I was seeing all these numbers, and then things were revealed to me as I built this thing. Like, I believe Paul was stopped on the Damascus Road on September the 24th in 32 AD. And I know now, uh, again, I don't know if it was prior, if this is his birthday or his death date, but I know now when Abraham was. It was exactly 2,000 years after creation. It was perfect. So anyway, let me stop there because I'm shaking. It's cold out here. It's like 39 now. It says 44. Never mind, it says 44, but it's still cold. I've turned into a big baby since I left Montana. It's been it's been 42 years. I was 18. It's 42 years ago I left. So plus here it's humid. The humidity really messes you up here. Uh, it must feel like negative 50 with the humidity. Maybe, could be. So anyway, Repo Man 64, like, comment, share, and subscribe, please. If you see something like that person with Apophis, a mistake I've made, or you see some symmetry somewhere that I missed, which I will add it to the timeline. I appreciate all of the positive comments, and the negative ones. I mean, that's fine. We'll just keep working on this until the rapture occurs. And that's what we do. That's what we do. We all just do our piece of the puzzle, working on this and seeing all of these things. I hope the rapture occurs before March 16th. Obviously, I hope all of these people that are looking at tomorrow and the next day are correct and we're gone. And then it's just going to be, heaven's going to be something else. We don't even have to, there will be no worries. It'll all be over with. So, all right. Repo Man 64, go to a quiet place by yourself. Nobody needs to know, and you don't need to tell anybody. And accept the Lord into your heart. Do the ABCs. Do whatever it is that God draws you to do. It's not mechanical, it's spiritual, it's heartfelt, it's you speaking with your creator, however that happens. Don't let anybody dictate to you how that has to happen, including going to a quiet place. Don't let anybody dictate to you. When you feel that tug in your heart that says, you know what, this stuff's getting scary. We're getting, and the whole world can see we're getting close to something. Don't let anybody add the works to it. Oh, if you don't do it this way, or if you do it that way, you weren't saved. That's ridiculous, and that's not what Scripture teaches us whatsoever. And all these works that people add into it, if you get saved, you have to have works. You will have works because you're saved. You don't have to have works to get saved. Keep your salvation, maintain your salvation. None of that matters. It's just Jesus. That's it. It's that simple. It's a cup. He hands you a cup. He hands you a cup. Just take it and drink from it. Kneel down in a quiet place. Do the ABCs, whatever you want to do. You know, talk to your father. He created you. He absolutely loves you. Like, I'm telling you, every single human being, I don't care what you've done it because Satan is in this world, and God knows that. Every terrible thing you've ever done is because of a behavior that you've learned from the most evil one telling you, it's not that bad. You're better than that person over there. He has brought about such chaos on this planet, and all God wants, the most simplest, universal thing that He wants is for you to take that cup and drink from it. Go to a quiet place or say the ABCs, whatever. That's it. To recognize that you're doomed. Those sins are going to carry you into the lake of the fire right next to the guy that deserves to started the whole thing. And when you see him groveling in hell, you're going to look at him and go, that's the guy. That's the guy that I came here for. That guy, he'll be like a worm groveling on the ground. He will be nothing. He will have no power whatsoever. He doesn't have any power over you now. All you have to do is accept him. Just accept Jesus, and that's it. And that's all. So, all right, we will chat with you all again later. How do I stop this thing? I always do that.